Hey guys, how's it going? Vincent here from the creativedojo.net. Today in this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to build this really grand cinematic kind of planet opener animation here with the asteroid field, some really interesting space environment. I want to show you some tips on how to improve this in my last tutorial. So before we get started, I want to thank our friends over at Squarespace for sponsoring today's tutorial. Squarespace is the only one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional online website, store, or portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off, head over to squarespace.com and use the promo code DOJO8. So let's go and take a look at what we're going to be creating today. So this is pretty cool. We have this really nice, large, dramatic kind of planet sitting in the background. We have some very interesting, intense lighting. We have a nice asteroid field, and we have a nice kind of space environment. We have some kind of space energy smoke in the background here. We have some kind of mist and dust here in the asteroid field, and I'm going to show you how to get started with this, how to create this in After Effects, and some ways to kind of improve on it and style lights to make it look pretty good. We are going to be using a plugin called Element 3D by Video Copilot to generate all these 3D stuff within After Effects. So again, pretty cool how it's entirely in After Effects. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to hop into After Effects, and we will create a new composition here. We'll call this one Planet Space Tutorial here. We will make it, 720p for this demonstration, and we'll make it around 20 seconds long and hit OK. Now I actually created a few assets for this tutorial. One is a space background, or I guess a starfield background that I created in Photoshop, and as you can see it's fairly large, so it should suffice for most projects here. So I'm going to drag it in, and essentially it's just a whole bunch of white little dots, specks, and some dust in the background, some variation in lighting, just so that we have a very basic kind of background to work with here. You could have done this in Photoshop, you could have done this in Trapcode Particular, but just having it rendered as a flat image just makes things a lot faster to render and easier to work with here. So this is just going to be the background, nothing more. And I'm making it a 3D layer, and I'm pushing it back in Z space, so it's very far back there. And the reason why we're pushing it way in the background is because, one, we want to simulate a 3D world, so this will help us kind of fake a 3D world. We're also going to be scaling it up just so that we have some more parallaxing. So you'll see this more prominently once we start adding the planets and asteroid, but essentially we want to create a 3D world here, and things move differently the further they're away from the camera and the closer they are to the camera. So this is where we're pushing it kind of further back here. So here we just have a space environment here, and I'll just create a new camera. So layer, new camera, call this camera, and we will hit OK, and we'll just zoom in here. So here we just have a basic camera setup, and we have a background. So let's go ahead and start with the obvious, the planet here. So we'll create a new layer, new solid. We'll call this one planet, make comp size, hit OK, and we will apply effect, Video Copilot Element 3D. Now Element 3D is a fantastic plugin from Video Copilot. I would highly recommend it. It's very affordable, and it's very powerful and very fast. So I'm not going to explain too much about this plugin here. I'm going to go into my scene setup, and then I'm going to go over to the model browser, and I will select a planet model here. Now this planet model is actually provided for free from Video Copilot. So if you have this plugin, you can go to the Video Copilot blog and download this exact model that I'm using right here. And that Video Copilot link will be in the description or article down below this video tutorial. So go ahead and download this free model from Video Copilot, and then you can get started creating planets. So I'm going to hop into the materials here. We'll go into the diffuse, and I'm just going to lower down the saturation just a little bit. Hit OK, and we will hit OK. And right off the bat, you're not going to see anything because, remember, our camera is zoomed way into Z space. So what we need to do is we need to go to the group 1, which is where the planet is. I'm going to open up the replicator as well as the particle look, and we will push the planet in Z space. And here we have the planet right around here. Now one of the difficult things about this technique I'm about to show you is that it's going to be a little bit tricky and hard to kind of calibrate the position in Z. So we are going to be using multiple instances of 3D particle stuff such as Element 3D. We're going to be using many duplicates of that. We'll also be using particular, and one of the limitations of After Effects is that there is no unified 3D system or 3D world. Every single plugin only has access to its own 3D world. So this element here has a 3D world of its own. In particular, will have a 3D world of its own. So you can't really tell, like what is in front of what, because that order is simply defined by the layer order in the stack here. So there is no like true unified 3D space. So you're gonna try your best to position things in the right spot. So I'm gonna push my planet into Z space here. And I'm gonna scale it up around, somewhere right here. Looking pretty good. Things move differently when they're larger and closer to the camera, etc. So just keep that in mind. You may need to adjust the position in Z and size a little bit as you progress. And I'm going to go into the scene set once more and just go ahead and tone down the specular here, because the specular is kind of a little bit too much on the planet, and we will hit OK. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the lighting real fast. So I'm going to go to layer new, and we'll create 2 lights. We'll call this one right light, and we'll make it around 90%. Now I think this would be an appropriate time to start thinking about your theme. So do you want to go for a really sci-fi fantasy kind of theme where you have like green nebulas and pink nebulas, red nebulas flying around and dust and everything like that, or do you want to make it more realistic, like a warm sun or something like that? So this is where you need to start thinking about your theme here, because you'll need to adjust your lighting color to match those themes. So I'm just going to set my right light over here. I'm going to shift it to the right here. I also move it in Z space. You don't want it to be too close to the camera here. So I'm holding down shift to really increase my increments. So I'm just gonna adjust my light. It's somewhere in the right side here. So I'm gonna adjust it to where it looks pretty good. I wanna make it very dramatic. Something like that. That's cool. We'll duplicate it. We'll call this left light. And we will do the exact same, except we'll hold down shift and we'll just push to the left here. And this is going to be kind of like a rim light. We'll just push it back a little bit, and then we'll hit AA to reveal the light options, and we'll tone down the intensity to about, let's say, 10%. It's going to be very subtle, maybe even 5%. We just want to separate the planet from the background. And mentioning our background, as you can see, our star field is gone because right now our background is being affected by the light because it's a 3D layer. So what you want to do is you want to hit AA for this layer here, the space background, and turn off accept lights. So now all the 3D layers, or at least this 3D layer, will not be affected by the lights. And you may need to do this for multiple layers here. So now let's go ahead and adjust our left light a little bit, like that. Maybe turn it down even more, 2%. Something very light, just so we see some details there. So I'm going to go for kind of a bluish theme, and then we can always change that later when we do color grading, color correction, stuff like that. So right here I have my planet, and it's looking very dull. It's looking very boring, this space environment. So let's go ahead and focus on the space environment right here. So I have another asset that I created in Photoshop here called Space Cloud 01. You can download this image in the article post down below. So I'm going to drag that in underneath my planet here. And as you can see, it's a very interesting piece of dust. We'll make it a 3D layer. We'll hit AA and turn off accept lights. And you will need to do this for a lot of your 3D layers. And we'll hit P on the keyboard, and we will push it back in Z space, just like how we did it before. So I want to scale it pretty far back, relatively the same distance in Z space as my star field here. But we'll scale it up pretty large. And this is going to be kind of the smoky, dusty atmosphere that probably doesn't really surround Earth like this, but again, we're kind of going for kind of a bluish sci-fi theme. So we'll scale this down a little bit, and we will turn down the opacity to maybe around 30%. We may even want to change the blend mode from normal to maybe screen or something. So we have that. So this is going to be the generic kind of smoke here. Now I also want to create a more, I guess, cosmic energy kind of texture here. So I'm going to do that with fractal noise. So we'll go to layer new, and we'll go to solid. We'll call this one energy, and we will apply effect. We'll go to noise and grain, and we'll apply a fractal noise, which is a very powerful effect. You can do many things with the fractal noise. You can even create a sun using fractal noise as a texture. So very interesting here. So We will switch it from noise type from soft linear to spline. Makes it a little bit softer. We will increase the complexity to 9 so there's more detail. And maybe we'll play around with the scale a little bit. But what I want to do is I want to get the pen tool here, or actually just get the ellipse tool, double click, feather it out a little bit. So we kind of have this smoky kind of texture here. Maybe 350 is good. And then we can adjust these points. Zoom out a little bit. We can adjust these points and kind of give our Earth a little bit more energy around it. Maybe something like you would see in a sci-fi movie. Yeah, something like that. And then we can definitely change the blending mode from maybe normal to, let's see here, maybe soft light. So as you can see, we have some detail here. If we turn off the energy, you can see what it does. We'll just place it underneath our planet. So we have something like that. And then maybe we can adjust some of the brightness. Just by doing something like that, you can get some very interesting kind of mystic smoke. And then on this energy layer, I want to apply a blur, vector blur, and this will make it a little bit more energy like. So we'll go into the energy layer, vector blur, we'll turn up the amount to around 15. As you can see already, we're getting more kind of like this energy feel. And then I want to play around with the ridge smoothness. I guess keeping it low is pretty good, maybe 0.5. And then we'll play with the map softness. So something like that. And you can go ahead and play around with it a little bit. But I think that's looking pretty cool. Now, I want to add some more atmosphere around our Earth here, some kind of glow like you would see in a movie. So I'm going to go into my planet element 3D layer. I'm going to go to layer. You can go to layer styles here and apply a outer glow. And we'll go into the outer glow settings and we will adjust first of all, the color to something more blue. And then we'll increase the size. And now would be a good time to start doing some basic color correction. So we'll go into our planet here. We'll apply a curves effect. Maybe we will a little bit of contrast. And we will maybe tint it with blue. And we'll copy this. We'll paste it into our energy. And I want to kind of tint it a little bit blue. It's looking a little bit better. So now let's go ahead and fine tune some of these things. I want to change the cloud to maybe add transfer mode and change the energy from soft light to maybe an add transfer mode as well. So it's a little bit more intense. And then we can adjust the RGB values a little bit here. And then tone down the brightness. So this energy is looking a lot better now. Maybe turn down the contrast. And I'm just going to do some quick color correction on the energy here to kind of match the environment. You want to go ahead and just match everything to one kind of tone first, and then you can always shift it using color grading here. So just try to match some things right here. And we'll go into the cloud and we'll do the same thing. We'll apply curves effect. And kind of just tint it a little bit blue. And that's looking pretty good. We can go ahead and tweak this stuff a little bit later. So I'm just going to adjust the energy here. And then maybe turn down the opacity to maybe 80%. Just so it's a little bit more subtle. And then I think that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and set up the asteroids. So I'm going to go to layer, new, solid. We'll call this Asteroids, and we'll apply effect, video copilot, element 3D. And for this model here, this actually comes with the starter pack. Like this comes with element 3D, so you don't need to download anything. So I'm gonna go to the starter pack and select Rock 02. Now if you want some more variation, go ahead and bring in Rock 01 as well as Rock 03. In this case, I'm just using one object here. So we have that. We'll go to group 1, open the replicator as well as the looks, and we'll push it in Z space. So here we have our asteroid. And again, this is going to be the tricky part. This is where we're going to make sure that all of our asteroids are in front of our planet and not behind it. And that would be kind of tricky when we have many asteroids. So I'm going to go to the replicator shape. We'll make it a 3D grid here. And I want to expand the scale in X so it's wider, and expand the scale in Z. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky here. And then we want to go ahead and increase the number of particles in X. So we'll crank it up here. So maybe around 17. We'll increase the number in Z to maybe around 5. And then maybe Y to 4. And then we'll scatter all these particles apart. Something like that. And then maybe we can decrease the amount to maybe 12. And then we'll go into the, let's see here, rotation under particle look. We'll change up the random rotation to 180, just so that we have variations in rotations here. That's pretty good. So we'll leave it at that. And then you may need to adjust the position in Z a little bit, because the movement will look a little bit weird if your planet is not in the right space in Z position. So that's our asteroid. And the lighting looks a little bit off here because we have some lighting here on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more light. And this will light our asteroids. And we'll call this asteroid light. We will hit OK. And we'll hit P on the keyboard and we'll push it way back in Z space. I want the light to be really coming from the sun, which we're about to create here. So I want to push the light, right here or so. Bring it up. Just kind of adjust the Z position. Something like that. And we'll just increase the brightness to maybe around 200%. So that we kind of have most of the lights coming from the front here. So you can see the asteroids are getting light from the front face here. And in the back they're pretty dark. And that's what we're kind of going for here. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and do one last thing. That's to create our lens flares. And that should give us pretty much all the elements within our scene. So we'll call this flare. And we'll apply effect. Video Copilot Optical Flares. This is another paid plugin. Very fast. Very easy and very customizable. So optical flares, we'll hop into the options and we'll apply a light, and we'll choose the real sun preset, but feel free to use whatever preset you wish. There are lots of pretty good sun presets in optical flares, so this is why I'm using optical flares. We'll change the source type from 2D to 3D so that our lens flare is actually in 3D space. And then as you can see, nothing really happens. We will move it in Z space here. There we go. There's our flare. And we'll change the transfer mode from normal to add. And we will go ahead and place it, right around here. So we'll just increase the brightness to compensate. Now the reason why I don't want to increase the scale is just because if you increase the scale, all the elements in the flare will also increase in scale. So I just want to increase the brightness here, so that we can kind of see it, and then we can adjust the lighting of it here. So increase the brightness to around maybe 525, and we'll apply an effect. We'll apply a fast blur, because right now everything's kind of just compacted in here, and I want to spread that out. So we'll repeat the edge pixel. We'll just blur it out maybe by 100 pixels. So it's a little bit softer here, and let's go ahead and change the asteroid light to something a little bit warmer, because we are going for a blue tone overall, but I want the sun to be somewhat realistic, so I want to make it an orange flare. So we'll just change the asteroid light to maybe around a warm color. Okay, and let's go ahead and do a quick grade, and this is just gonna get us in the right direction here. So we'll create a new adjustment layer, and we will call this one looks. And we'll apply effect. We'll go to Red Giant Color Suite. Now, if you have an older version, it might be called Magic Bullet Suite, but this is the new color suite here. but the effects are still the same here. So we'll just apply magic bullet looks, or I guess now red giant color suite looks. We'll go into the edit, and we will select a preset just to kind of get started here. So there's some pretty cool ones here, as you can see here. This is the kind of bluish tone I was talking about, this bleach bypass cool. There's a hot and cold one. You know, it's a lot here. There's the coolest alternative. And you just want to find one to kind of get you started. So I'm kind of liking this particular one right here. So, you know, let's go ahead and stick with this one. Yeah, let's go ahead and stick with this one. We'll hit finish. And this will kind of overall just kind of give you a basic grade. And this is very, very cool. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and tweak the individual settings within looks. That's pretty cool. But overall, I think it's already looking pretty good. So I want to go into the flare, maybe add a little bit of flicker, just a little bit. Maybe we'll make it like a speed of 5, amount of 5. And then we have something like that. So let's go ahead and set up our camera rig here. So I'm going to drag our camera up here. And we'll create 2 nulls. Actually, maybe in this case we only need 1 null. So we'll create a null object here. We'll call this controller. We will make it a 3D null object. And we'll parent our camera to our controller here. And hit P on the controller for the position. And we'll start pretty zoomed up. You know, something like that. And then we will hit P on the keyboard. We'll move maybe around 12 seconds long, and we'll just push it back. So we can kind of see all of our planets here. Something like that. And then maybe I wanted to rotate the camera just a little bit, so hit P on the keyboard. We will go for the Z rotation here. Maybe we'll rotate it maybe 25 degrees. And then we'll move maybe 6 seconds in, halfway, and change it back to 0 rotation. We will easy ease these keyframes. Hop into the graph editor here, and I really want to smooth this stuff out, because when you rotate something like this drastically, the whole scene, it looks very, very weird when it just all of a sudden just rotates in the right direction. So you really want to pull the handle here to make it very, very soft, gradual rotation here at the end. So we have something like that. I want to hop into the energy and just do a quick contrast curve, because again our energy is a little bit too much. So, and then maybe we can even scale it down to maybe like 90%, so we have smaller little details in the atmosphere, and that's looking a lot better here. And if things are a little bit too dark for you, you can always go ahead and add an ambient light just to kind of brighten all the 3D models up a little bit. For this case, I'm going to go into the asteroids here. And it's a little bit too bright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on ambient occlusion. So we'll go to render settings, we'll go to ambient occlusion, and this will just add some self-shadowings to it. So we'll change the intensity to around 9. That would darken it a little bit. Now one thing you can do is you can actually add some fog here, so that the further away particles can be a little bit more faded away, kind of lighter than the ones in the back here. So fog would help. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and adjust some of the curves here for the asteroids. So I'm going to apply curves to the asteroids, drag it in. I really want to add some contrast here. I just want the rim or edge of the asteroid to be pretty bright, so I'm going to do something like that. And then maybe we can bring up some of the blues and the shadows, kind of warm up the highlights a little bit. Something like that. So one quick problem you can see is that since our flare is above our asteroid, sometimes we get our flare on top of our asteroid. It doesn't make any sense because the asteroid should be blocking the flare. But a lot of times I've noticed that the flare on top of the asteroid just looks a little bit better overall, because it gives it that kind of glow or haze over the asteroids here. So you can actually color correct that and add your own, haze manually. But a lot of times I just find it easier and a lot nicer just to have your flare above your asteroid layer. Now obviously it doesn't look right if our asteroid is like this. So a quick fix, if you don't want to do it manually, is just play around with the random seed of the asteroid, and that will just move it hopefully enough to where your asteroid is not blocking directly the sun like that, like how it is right now. So just kind of flip through it, or you can just modify some of these settings here, like the X scale, something like that. and maybe the Z scale. And then maybe add some more particles. So maybe 13, 5, 6. We'll add some more particles, asteroids in there, and play around with the size a little bit. And add some size randomness, maybe around 15% randomness should be pretty good. You know, something like this to give it more variation. So that's looking pretty good. Before we wrap things up and continue adding the finishing touches, I want to talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the place to be. They make it extremely easy and quick to set up an online presence, allowing you to pick from over 20 highly customizable and professional design templates. With their click and drag visual interface, adding content is extremely fast and efficient, allowing you to focus more on your content and what you love instead of worrying about all the technical stuff. They have awesome 24/7 support, and starting at just $8 a month, you can get a free domain if you sign up for a year. You can start your free trial of Squarespace by going to squarespace.com, no credit card required. Now, when you do decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code DOJO8 to get 10% off the life of your order and support the dojo. Squarespace, everything you need to create an exceptional website. So back to the tutorial, we're pretty much done. Now one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly add Mojo, just because I think Mojo would really help this particular shot here. And just because Mojo already has this kind of color palette here, so dark, cool shadows and bright, warm highlights here. So we'll go to Effect, and we'll go into the color suite again, and we'll apply Mojo. And we'll definitely tone down Mojo a little bit. We'll play around with the balance here. This is a little bit too cool for me. So maybe around here. We'll tone down the tint. It's a little bit too strong. And then we will go ahead and play with the warm it. Now, most people think that, you know, you only have from 0 to 100, but you can actually go negative values with warm it here. So we can actually go in the opposite direction, negative, and it will change the temperature, I guess, of the shot here, or the scene here. So I'm just going to decrease it a little bit so it's a little bit cooler. And I really want to tone down the punch it, which is kind of like the contrast. So just tone down the punch it here. And then just bleach it a little bit, which means kind of desaturating it. And we have something like that. I'm just going to pop in an effect, color correction, and we'll apply curves. Just brighten it, add a little bit more contrast here, maybe adjust some of the color. Something like that, and that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and hop into looks and just add a quick little vignette just to kind of soften the edges up a little bit. So we'll go into the tools here, and we'll go to the vignette under lens. We'll maybe increase the radius a little bit, and we'll just decrease the strength. We want it to be very subtle, so maybe around 45%, and we will hit OK here. And then we can create our very quick letterboxing just to focus our attention on the center here to give it kind of a filmic look in a way. So we have our letterboxing with the InstaFilm script. And then one last thing I forgot to do is add some kind of more 3D atmospheric smoke. So we have our atmosphere smoke around our planet in our space environment here, but we don't actually have it in the 3D space like with the asteroids and such like that. So you can do that with Tripco Particular here. So we'll go to Layer Solid. We'll call this Smoke. We will apply Trap Code Particular, so search in Particular, drag that in, and place our smoke layer underneath our flare here. And we'll zoom in. And let's go ahead and go into the emitter. And we'll go into position Z. We'll push it back in Z space again because it's kind of out of frame here. So here we have our particles. And we'll change the emitter type from point to box. We'll increase our emitter size in X. And then we will increase it in Z. And then we will go and increase it in Y a little bit here. And then we'll change the velocity from 100 to 10 so that's just moving a little bit slower. And then we'll hop into the particles tab here. We'll change the size to maybe around 90 or so. We'll change the particle type from sphere to cloudlet. And then we'll tone down the opacity to maybe around 5%, and we'll see what it looks like. So this is what we're kind of going for here. But we'll change the opacity and randomness to around 25%. and then we'll tint the smoke color a matching color. So, you know, depending on what you're trying to do here. So maybe around this color here, but we will tone down the opacity. So increase the randomness a little bit, and then tone down the opacity. So we want to make it very, very subtle. So maybe 1% here, maybe even 0.5%. And then we can go into the transfer mode, set it from normal to screen, so it'll blend a little bit nicer. We'll go to the opacity over life and just decrease it like that so that it'll fade. Actually, we'll use this one here. So it'll fade in and fade out. Maybe adjust the opacity here. So we have our 3D smoke in our environment. So as we're traveling through the field here, you can see that we have our nice little smoke here. And it just kind of blends in with our asteroids. So that's always pretty good. And then we'll drop in another curves effect onto our smoke. Maybe we'll add some contrast a little bit. Now lastly, you want to make sure that you're working in 16 bits per channel because we're doing a lot of glows, we're doing a lot of gradient work here. So if you're not working in 16 bits, you may get some really ugly bandings and some flat looking glows. So one way to fix that is to switch into 16 bits per channel here. So you're probably at 8 bits per channel. Make sure you're working in 16 bits per channel. And one last thing to do to kind of get rid of some of the unwanted bandings, just apply a grain layer. So we'll go into layer, new adjustment layer, and we'll call this grain, and make sure it's below our letterboxing. And we will go to effect, we'll apply noise and add grain. We'll change the output from preview to final output, and then we'll change the intensity from 1 to maybe 0.23 or so. So we just have some subtle grain that will give it a more organic look, as well as get rid of some of our bandings. So the last thing to do is to actually switch everything to full quality mode here. So the asteroid has some nasty aliasing issues. So we'll go into the asteroids, we'll go into the output here, go to sampling and aliasing, and we'll change the multi-sampling to 16, and we'll change the super sampling to around 2, and that should give us some really, really nice fine edges here that will fix a lot of the aliasing issues. The planet shouldn't be an issue here, so that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and do a quick RAM preview. So that's looking really, really nice. Of course, you would want to fine tune it, tweak it, do some more color correction, color grading on it, and work on the fine details of the asteroid and stuff like that. But overall, I think I did a better job at explaining how to set up the environment, and then you can go ahead and fine tune it on your own. So hopefully they give you a really good idea on how to do something like this using After Effects and Element 3D. It's a very, very fun thing to do, and it's really fun to create space stuff like this. If you wanted to take a step further, you can go ahead and enable depth of field. You can add some light rays for shadows, because again, the sun is casting some shadows from the asteroid, so you can add maybe a shine to it to create some kind of shadow rays, stuff like that. You can go ahead and add in 3D particle stars and stuff like that. So very, very interesting. There's a lot you can do with it, but hopefully you had a great time learning. I know I had a great time doing this tutorial. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, and go ahead and read the article. There's tons of information in the article down below, so check it out. All the links will be in the video description down below, so check it out. But once again, guys, my name is Vincent Wynn from the Creative Dojo, and I'll see you guys next time.